Clemente, dance instructor from Alvin Ailey on drums. Hello, you're watching Arise Entertainment 360. I'm Lola Ogunaike.
And I'm Shannon Lanier.
Yesterday, the world lost one of the greatest freedom fighters it has ever known, Nelson Mandela. The anti-apartheid leader died from complications related to a lung infection. He was 95. It is a time for mourning, but here at Arise TV 360, we also want to celebrate Mandela's life and wonderful legacy.
Please join us as we mark the passing of this global hero.
It was a sight that millions around the world had been waiting more than 27 years to see. Nelson Mandela walking the streets of South Africa free and triumphant. Nelson Mandela's long walk to freedom and world renown began on July 18, 1918, in a small village in South Africa. During his school years, as he eventually trained to become a lawyer, Mandela heightened his fight against apartheid. For Mandela, student anti-colonial activism led him to co-found the African National Congress to further fight against harsh racial segregation. Initially committed to nonviolent mass struggle, Mandela and his colleagues turned to armed action after government forces viciously shot unarmed protesters at Sharpeville in March 1960, killing 69 people. In 1962, he was arrested, convicted, and jailed for his actions against authorities. Mandela was sentenced again in June of 1964, this time to life imprisonment for his involvement in planning armed action. In 1988, he was moved to a facility near Paarl, from where he was released by then South African President F.W. de Klerk on February 11, 1990. It was May 1994 when Nelson Mandela joined his fellow black South Africans to vote for the very first time. Nelson Mandela won the election, becoming South Africa's first duly elected black president. Everyone wanted to meet him, and in 2004, he announced,
"I am now retiring from retiring."
Although he left center stage, he would never leave the hearts and minds of people around the world.
Wow, that was powerful.
It was.
Wow. Well, you know, President Barack Obama also joined world leaders in remembering Nelson Mandela. Here's what they had to say about the late icon.
At his trial in 1964, Nelson Mandela closed his statement from the dock saying, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." And Nelson Mandela lived for that ideal, and he made it real. He achieved more than could be expected of any man. And today he's gone home. And we've lost one of the most influential, courageous, and profoundly good human beings that any of us will share time with on this earth. He no longer belongs to us. He belongs to the ages.
Artists from across the globe took to social media to reflect on Mandela's impact. More than 7 million tweets were sent yesterday.
Wow.
95,000 a minute, Shannon.
Wow, that was huge.
LIONEL Richie actually tweeted, "Nelson Mandela was a father to all of us. May his life be a constant reminder that we are all one world. He will be missed, LR." And CHARLIZE, THERON, who is South African, tweeted, "My thoughts and love go out to the Mandela family. Rest in peace, Madiba. You will be missed, but your impact on this world will live forever."
HARPER wrote, #Mandela, an inspiration, a man of character, wisdom, intelligence, and purpose. Thank you for all you have done for others. #Rest in peace, Nelson Mandela. And Michael Moore spoke out saying, "I was convinced Nelson Mandela would never get out of prison. When he did and became president, I decided right then anything is possible."
Russell Simmons added, "Nelson Mandela was an angel walking on this earth. You were one of the greatest teachers this world has ever known. We love you and we miss you." And Alicia Keys performed for Madiba at his 91st birthday, and she tweeted a statement saying, "I'm deeply saddened by the profound loss of Nelson Mandela. He was more than just a man, but a king of peace and a beacon of hope for anyone suffering or oppressed. His courageous life touched the hearts of millions."
Some powerful treats, and I'm glad that
beautiful.
people were able to express themselves for the world to see.
When something like this happens, social media becomes a communal event where people can mourn and celebrate the life of a lost one together.
Yeah, I'm glad we had the chance to experience that.
That's true.
And now we are joined on the phone with other memories of Nelson Mandela with Malak Compton Rock, the wife of comedian Chris Rock. Hello, are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, you've actually met Mr. Mandela. What was the occasion, and what was it like?
Oh, my gosh. It's probably the greatest joy and honor of my life other than birthing my children. I mean, it really, really was. The entire family had the opportunity of meeting Mr. Mandela for the first time while traveling to South Africa, actually on vacation. And we were in the country, and this is kind of a funny story, put in a request to be able to meet him, and it was denied. And they called us back. They called us back, and they said, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Mandela is at his country home, and he doesn't accept guests there. If he was in Johannesburg, he would have been happy to meet with you guys, but he can't." And I remember my husband and I just kind of chuckling and saying, "Oops, you know, we wouldn't dare of thinking of infringing on his personal space at his country home." And it was during the Christmas holidays, and he used to go there for Christmas. Well, a couple of days later, we were actually on our way to depart to Cape Town, and we got a call that Mr. Mandela had changed his mind, and if we wanted to come, we needed to come to his country home that very day and get there by private plane because there was no other way we could get there in time to be able to meet him. So, of course, we said yes, and we scrambled to get out there. We were scheduled to have a half-an-hour tea. It ended up lasting 2 hours.
My goodness.
Wow.
He was incredibly gracious and lovely. But what I kept hearing yesterday during the reports, and I can attest to it, is that he's funny. He
Really?
was so funny.
Who's funnier, him or your husband?
You know, I would have to say that day, probably him, because my husband was a little dumbstruck, to tell you the truth.
Well, what was some of the things you all joked about and talked about that day?
He just kept asking Chris questions like, do you know Bill Cosby? If you do, tell me a couple Bill Cosby stories. You know, just all of these celebrities that we thought it was just so funny that he would ask about and want to know personal stories. It was also lovely to be there with his wife, the amazing Graça Michel. I certainly wish that more young people in our country knew of her and knew of her tremendous work to help the world's children. I used to work for UNICEF, and at the time that I was there, she actually wrote the State of the World's Children's Report one year, which was on armed conflict and children in war. She's an incredibly accomplished lady in her own right, and it was truly a blessing to be able to spend time with her as well. But the funny part comes when we were about to leave, all of his grandchildren come running into the room to take a picture with Chris. So we have this great photo of all of us with Mr. Mandela and also his grandchildren. And we learned that the reason why they invited us was because one of the grandchildren overheard that Chris had put in a request to meet Mr. Mandela and that it was denied. And they were like, "Grandfather, are you crazy? You have to allow us. We want to meet with Chris Rock." And that's why we were called back and told that we could come to the family home because he was giving the treat to his grandchildren.
Wow, that must have been an unforgettable moment.
It really was.
Malak, what do you remember most about that day?
You know, just the sheer graciousness of him. Just so kind, so gentle, so sweet. Another kind of moment that always makes me chuckle is that my daughter my middle child at the time was 3, And Mr. Mandela kept calling her to his lap, to sit on his lap, and she kept looking at him like, I'm not going to you. And every time he would reach his arms out, she would run the opposite way.
Oh, cute.
And so finally, on like maybe the 12th time that Mr. Mandela asked for her, she finally looks up at him, and I have this great picture of her. Her hands are on the coffee table in front of him, and she's kind of peeking back at him. And then finally she turns around and she goes and gets on his lap.
Oh.
And, of course, that's just a phenomenal set of photos. We were also very lucky, you guys, that his official photographer, who literally has been shooting him, you know, for decades, was there.
Wow.
So all of those shots they allowed us to have.
So tell me, you know, being in his presence and then learning about him over the years, are there any specific lessons or wisdom that he shared with you that you'll pass down to your children?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we know that, you know, I believe, you know, if I get there before you do, I am obligated to bore a hole and pull you through, or services and rent we pay for living. And that's how he lived his life. I mean, he wanted to make life better for all of us, but certainly the most disadvantaged of us, not just in his country, which, of course, you know, has had not just issues with race, but issues with HIV/AIDS, issues with poverty, and wanting to uplift the people of his country, but really the people of the world. And I think that is an important lesson that I try to instill in my children, that it is important to care about all of us. We are a global family, and that's how he thought. And forgiveness, you know, the lesson of, you know, reconciliation that was probably the most powerful thing he did as a leader. The forgiveness of his oppressors is such an incredible lesson that all of us can learn, whether it's in our daily life, right, and it's a girlfriend or a family member that we're mad at, right, picking up the phone. And I heard someone say on CNN this morning, you know, the lesson of just picking up the phone and saying you're sorry, even if it's not your fault, so that you can reconcile with someone.
Those are great life
certainly
lessons.
on a global issue.
Definitely. Those are great.
Other leaders need to follow that lead.
Yes,
Those are great life lessons to take with you. But overall, what do you believe his legacy will be?
It's a free South Africa. Hey, South Africa is like a second home to me. Part of the philanthropic programs that I run are in South Africa. I'm there often. To experience the richness of this country and experience the richness of the freedom of black people is, you know, quite extraordinary. I did not travel to the country prior to the end of apartheid, so I wasn't there. But certainly anyone over the age of 30 can tell you stories. Anyone over the age of 30 will pull out their passbook and show it to you. I work in some of the most poor shanty towns in Johannesburg, and it's people who, you know, are still feeling the remnants of that horrible, oppressive program called apartheid. So the fact that he was able to not only ensure that that system ended, but bring about a democratic South Africa, an amazing constitution. If anyone is a history buff out there, to read the South African Constitution is just a joy. And, you know, my hope is that the people of South Africa, the people of the world, will continue to use him as our guidance, especially our moral guider, and not let his death stop us from living up to the ideals that he truly wants all of us to encompass.
Malak Compton Rock, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your memories, your pictures, and thank you for just being with the Rise TV 360 today. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it so much.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, those pictures are incredible.
I know.
aren't they?
That's something you will never forget in your life,
Such
I'm
a
sure.
historical moment.
Yeah,
And
glad-
to know that he's actually funny.
I know. That's what you and she was saying, you know, on CNN and other programs. We kept seeing on Rise, we were talking about it all day, how funny he was. And you see a lot of the pictures here on the wall. He's laughing, he's smiling, he's enjoying the life that he has. That's one of the things that forgiveness can do for you, free your own heart.
That's a very